But when we went to the races, we never went in the Honda truck, ever.
Yep.
And we just looked from how far, and I never met any riders, any of that. Like, he could have totally brought me in, talked to Cliff, talked to those guys, and they could introduce me to McGrath, whatever. No way. No way would my dad do that, which is cool.
All right, episode 3, all for one. I'm here with one of my good friends, Lars Lindstrom. Lars, thanks for being on, man.
Yeah, no worries. It'll be fun.
Yeah, we tried to do this in Fort Worth, didn't really work out, and then I tested until like 5:30 tonight. Drove to Torrance. It's like 8 o'clock right now, so thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate you inviting me. I mean, it's an honor.
Dude, I mean, really, you should be thanking me. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I am.
Well, sweet, man. Like, one of the things that has been surprising to me is your level of, you were just a celebrity. Like, I walk through the pits now, and people are like, hey, can you take a picture? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So they hand me their phone, and then I take a picture.
It's really my favorite part, yeah. Like, when people are like, hey, Lars, can I have your autograph? And you're standing right there. I'm like, this is kind of ridiculous, but yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, I guess just because when you get a little bit more exposure, like they interview me on TV and whatever else, people just recognize your face and then they want your autograph. It's kind of funny. Like, even though I'm really nobody, it's just like association, I guess, with face, because like I said, Danny signs autographs.
He does?
Yeah.
Our PR guy, Danny?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, sometimes.
I didn't know that. I guess people see him on TV sometimes.
Exactly, yeah. He's on the podium.
Yeah.
Like, he's the first face there with, like, handling a bottle of water. Hopefully the lid's off. He doesn't get yelled at again.
That was Southwick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Danny forgot to take the water off, and Jet was
Your
like, give me
Nicoletti's
the water.
The answer was the best.
What'd he say?
Because he's like, somebody was like, don't you think Jet was kind of being a jerk, like for not having, just because he didn't have the water bottle open? And Nicoletti's like, well, I mean, he just did a gnarly moto at Southwick. It was super hot that day. And that guy had 30 minutes to take that bottle of water out.
That's for you, Danny. Yeah, that I've always told people, like, the closest I've ever felt to dying is at the end of a hot moto. Like, you get so panicky, and like it's like,
yeah. And the way he put water down too, it's like a bottle of water and that thing disappeared in like 2 seconds, like, and it's gone.
Yeah,
it's it's amazing.
You just want someone to take an ice chest and just dump it over you. Yeah, that has to be a little bit interesting for you, though. One of the first times I remember you was it was my first race team test with Geico. I was an amateur still, and it was just before the outdoor season. They were doing their preseason outdoor stuff, and so I went up because I was going to race the last 4 nationals. I still have the Reds and stuff to do, but they wanted to get kind of like a little bit going before my race as nationals, and that was kind of a good time. And you were the test truck guy.
Yeah.
You were the test mechanic, and I think I looped out somehow. I had this big crash and mowed my visor off.
Which time? You spent some loop outs.
That's my second time to loop out at Zaca.
What track was it?
It was at Zaca
No
Station.
way.
Yeah.
Okay. 07?
Yeah, 07.
Okay.
Yep. So I mowed my visor off, and I had a visor, but I didn't have screws. So you let me use your visor screws.
Oh, no way.
But I also remember at that trip that I saw you ride.
Oh, really?
And I was like, dude, that guy rips. I thought you were actually like a rider there testing.
Oh, nice.
So a lot of people don't know that you're a good rider.
I mean, I rode a decent amount and never really, I mean, I raced pro, but, never at any kind of elite level like you guys were at. It was just, I got injured. My knees blew out. I blew out my knee when I was 13. And so that was always, and then I blew my other knee out when I was 16 or 17. So those really put a huge damper on any kind of career. But at the same time, I didn't have I never really had the belief in me that, or probably instilled in me too, that I could be like a great rider. It was like, you might be able to make a night show. And then you should be so happy because the other stuff is just impossible. Don't even think about that, And I joke with my brother about that because I think he had that kind of same mentality.
Yeah.
And so that really like hampered the career, if there is one, you know, or was one. But yeah, I mean, I always rode, and especially in my later, probably when I started working here and getting to watch riders like you and you know, K-Dub and Jeremy and all those guys, I think just being able to hang out and watch and see all the different things that you guys did and techniques and all that probably helped me more than anything.
Yeah.
And so I got, you know, a little bit better. In my mid-20s, I probably was way better than I was when I was a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah. I two other riding stories that I remember was
okay, I know which one. I know one for sure.
Wyvern Ridge.
Okay.
And probably the other one too. I'm going to talk about. But I remember you were riding Supercross.
Yeah.
On Millsap's bike. And you had this big crash, knocked yourself out.
Oh, it's dirty.
It was the first time I'd heard someone snore. Like you say, like, oh yeah, they're snoring.
Yeah.
I remember Shorty came over to you. He like turned around and like I was walking that way. He's like, "Don't go, it's bad."
Yeah.
And
I drove the test truck.
You drove the test truck there.
Yeah.
So how did the test truck get back?
Brian Fleck Dunlop. He drove it home with me. The crazy part was I was out for like 5 minutes. It was a big one, and I remembered exactly what had happened. And like usually you're like, "What happened? What happened?" Like I remember exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Because there was like his bike was so stiff, and there was like a little jump and it was like a 2-footer to a 3-footer immediately, and then you bounced it, remember?
Yep.
And I did it a few times, no big deal. And then the one time I bounced it and landed like a little short and probably a little front end high. And I was like, oh, no big deal. But the shock was so stiff, it pushed the front down quick and pulled my hand out. And my hand came off, and I went over and endoed into the next thing. It was bad. And then K-Dub was the one that was there.
Yeah.
And I think Dottie was there too.
Yeah, Dottie. I think maybe that was one of the first years they like were able to like leave the kids.
Yeah. Because I think they were the ones that kind of like took care of me a little bit there, and then and then Brian Fleck drove it home. But yeah, what's the next one?
I think you probably know, but we're at the Corona test track. and you rode my bike, and I could not believe that you were going through the Supercross. Whoops. But I'm like, Lars, you learned Supercross in the 90s.
Big time.
90s whoop guy, because your butt was like over the back fender.
Oh yeah. Terrified. Because I never really like learned how to ride whoops. First off, I never rode a real Supercross track that had real whoops, like not really.
Yeah.
And especially when I was coming up, you know, and then, or when I was younger. And then my bike was never, ever Supercross suspension, ever. It was always production.
You went to a race with...
I raced every Supercross I ever raced except for my last one on production suspension.
That's insane.
Yeah, because it was, I think it was kind of a little bit of a mentality of my dad, like, you don't need that. Like, it's more rider, it's, you know, whatever. And whatever else, you know, like didn't want to spend the money to have, I couldn't have 2 sets of suspension, you know, that would have been that would have been crazy. So, like it was just always like you had to time everything perfectly, over jump something, clang, you know, casing you could do a little bit, but I remember I was just terrified.
Well, dude, no wonder. If I would have known that you learned whoops on stock suspension, I would have probably given you less of a hard time.
Yeah, but that was funny. I remember because you were giving me the 90s butt back style or whatever. Yeah. It was funny.
So, I mean, I think a lot of people probably newer to the sport don't know much about your dad.
Yeah.
But is your dad, I want to talk about him a little bit more, but is he the reason that you got into riding?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, him and my brothers, for sure. My dad raced pro, you know, in Sweden, I guess in the infancy of the sport, right? And then that was in the mid-60s, mid-60s, I guess. And then he got a job at Husqvarna as an engineer, and then he did that. So he developed the bike, and he developed and tested the bike with the little team that they had there. And then he would go and race too. But his racing career was more based off of him going and basically showing the motorcycle to different markets. Like he was in Australia for a long time, or I shouldn't say a long time. He was in Australia for some time. He was in New Zealand. He was in all these different countries, and then finally the U.S.
Yeah. And
then he was in the U.S. coming here racing whatever race he could race. My dad won Baja.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he won Baja. He won Baja 500. He went the Mint 400. He won a bunch of big races. And actually, at one point, some of my buddies, friends of friends, when we were younger, were asking, like, they were desert riders, and you can say, I won Baja. There's like 1,000 classes, so you're like, I won Baja in the like plus 60 novice class, whatever. I don't even know what classes are, but there's a decent amount.
Yeah.
So it was cool because the guy's like, my one buddy, hey, his dad won Baja, and then the guy's like, oh yeah, well, like, what class? And then, it was talking to my dad actually, and he was kind of like, yeah, whatever, what class? And my dad's like, oh, overall, and it was just kind of one of those cool, like, the guy was like, oh. So that was cool because he did all that with like Malcolm Smith and all those guys back in the day. So he rode Husky motorcycles, showed them off in all these different types of races. I mean, I think they would ride like flat tracks and stuff because if there was one, they'd do whatever. And so his job was never really to be the guy and like to go win championships. At least it's not the way that it seems to me.
Yep.
He was more of a marketing guy.
Right.
And then at the same time, showing or trying to develop the bike.
Right.
And I think that's why it ended with him, because he was like wanting to develop all these things. And they were, they had all these restrictions, and the guys that were in charge were like really old school and like didn't want to change.
Yeah.
And there's two quick things I'll say. The one thing was, their foot pegs were just like rubber, like they were like, or not even rubber, they were just like these metal things with no grip.
I have my dad's bike, which is a 1974 Cowie 450 two-stroke.
Yeah.
And dude, the pegs are like, they're literally rubber.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea how they do that.
Those one, and that might have been a little after even the late 60s. They were like metal with like a couple of holes in the metal, and the ends maybe had a little bit, but there was like no grip on them. And so he was like, hey, we need to make these things with like sharper things so that your feet can stick. And his manager or whoever it was told him, you can't do that. And he's like, well, why not? I don't want my feet to slip off. And I think the customer or whatever is like, if you do that, it'll tear up your boots, and you can't tear up your boots. And so my dad's like, okay. And then later on, they were like, their front brake was terrible. So he's like, man, we need a really much stronger front brake. And, maybe even like, maybe even a disc type of brake, or, like in thinking about that. Mm-hmm. And the guy's like, no, you can't do that either. And why not? Well, if you have too strong a front brake, you'll go over the bars. So he's just like, I can't do anything. And I think that came to a head, and that's when he quit to do that. And then stayed in the U.S.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. What was I know there's a big deal with the Throttle.
Yeah.
So can you take us down that road for a minute?
Yeah. I think, they were living, him and my mom were living in the U.S., going back and forth from Sweden to the U.S. And then he had an idea, because of the throttle cable used to come straight out, you do a huge arc, and then go down to the carburetor, and it would snag on like branches and whatever. I mean, the thing came straight out. You've probably seen them, right? And so he had the idea to run it into a housing with a little spool, and it would turn the 90 degree and go down to avoid all that.
Yeah.
And he worked at Husky, quit. Then I think he worked at like Dirt Bike Magazine, and I could be wrong on a little bit. I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg. But basically, he took 1 year where he didn't work at all. He just developed the throttle.
Yeah.
And while he did that, like, he didn't make any money, and they just survived.
That's insane.
Yeah, and that's one cool thing that he said about my mom, is that at that time, they had 2 kids, not me. It was my 2 brothers that are older, and they basically, the whole year, he just developed that thing, worked on it, made no money, and they made it happen. She never complained.
That's insane.
It was cool.
They just don't make them like that anymore.
No. And so anyways, so he did that. And then he got a job, like I said, either before that, Dirt Bike Magazine. He was an editor there, and he learned how to shoot pictures and do all this other stuff, and then write. He's a Swedish guy, writing for an American magazine, and like made it happen. So I thought that was pretty impressive. And then he got a job at Honda in the service shop, and he was going to be the engineer for the service shop or something like that. So then that kind of whole thing kind of took away a little bit of time from the throttle, and this is just how I remember him explaining it, but the thing started taking off. And then he was working at Honda, that started taking off, he started selling those like a bunch, and he didn't get a patent on it, which is the question that everybody asks.
Yeah, I was curious about that. Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly why. I think a little bit was like it was going to be a pain in the butt and expensive to get a patent. And then maybe at the same time, maybe he didn't really think it was going to be that big of a deal. And also, I think part of it was he was working at Honda. So at that point, it was kind of like, it's just a better idea.
Yeah.
I think anybody can use it kind of deal. And he didn't really think so much about the money, I think. And so the Throttle obviously was a huge deal at the time. And then everybody was buying it. So I think he made some decent side money on that, you know. And he actually named his company, which I didn't know until recently, that his company name is Lunar Engineering. And I thought that it was a play on like gunner, like people call him Gunner, but he basically prefers gunner, I think, in English. In Swedish, like people try to say it, it's usually a little bit off. But he was when he was working on that, he would come home and he'd work at night all night. And I don't know if it was him or one of his buddies was like, man, you're basically, you're working during the lunar time under the moon.
Yeah.
So he named it Lunar Engineering.
Oh, that's cool.
Which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And so he ended up making that and then got the job at Honda. And then that, basically transferred into developing production motorcycles and then into the race team.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. You guys probably, I mean, I'm sure there's other teams, but I don't know what other teams like have that kind of legacy as far as a father being a team manager and then you now becoming team manager. Is that pretty cool for you?
It's cool, but I don't really think about it too much. I think it would be a whole lot cooler if he was a racer and then I was the racer. That would be cool. But I mean, it's cool, but I don't think of it like this is like some lifetime achievement that I don't think he only did it for those 2 years and probably learned a lot and had a good time, but it was a lot of travel and he had at that time I think I was just being born, so there's 4 kids, and then for me I never really was like, man, my lifelong goal is to be team manager. As much as I love it and I think it's awesome, it wasn't something that I was kind of like, man, I'm going to make my dad proud. It was just, it's cool. And I think he's into it and all that and proud of me. But yeah, I don't really dwell on it, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think like his love of riding, love of motorcycling, did that definitely influence you and your brothers to kind of get involved with that?
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, when my brothers were little, in the early 70s, mid 70s, my dad was like just retiring from kind of racing.
Yeah.
And then he started working a dirt bike. So he was still riding a lot.
Yeah.
So when they were little, he was still relevant and he knew a bunch of the top guys and was involved. And then he started working for Honda, and was the manager there in the early 80s, 79, 80. And so my dad hired Johnny O'Mara.
No way.
Which is super cool to, now that Johnny's back on the team and, with us and helping out. So that part to me is cooler than anything, like that legacy of all that. But my brothers got to hang out with him and all those guys. And I think, Chuck's son and, all those guys at the end. So they got to experience some really cool stuff and they got to go riding. And so they, around all that, loved the everything about it and then, kept racing and riding. And then I grew up seeing all that, seeing my brothers, and they were 10 and 8 years older than me. So I don't think if you're a little kid and you don't get into it after that, then there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, with my son now, I'm like, people always ask me if he's going to ride and this and that. And I mean, I would love for him to ride. The whole amateur racing thing kind of scares me a little bit, but how could he not, right? And if I were to tell him not to ride, I feel like the chain smoking dad that's like, just freight training like all kinds of cigarettes all day and then like, don't smoke,
Yeah.
So I hope that, that I can kind of carry that passion with him the way that like your family has.
Yeah. I wonder though, like even with my son now, he's 9 and he likes it. And I mean, he's into it. He watches the races and he's like, he gets pretty fired up watching it, especially now. But for a long time, he didn't really care at all. And I'm like, man, like kind of like,
let's go.
Yeah, like you're not even that I want him to go and race and ride. And like I'm fine. I just want him to ride, and so we can go riding and have fun. And he can ride. He rides pretty well. So we can go do that now, which is fun. But it was weird that he didn't like around all that stuff. And like when I was a little kid, I was like obsessed. I'm like watching videos and wanting to ride, but I didn't really get to ride until I was a little bit older. Not really. And so I don't know if it's maybe like too easy.
Yeah.
And now there's so many other distractions that they can do that it's not the same.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that it's kind of like that because all the guys that, even before me too, that we talked to or whatever, they didn't have much. So if you had a bike and you can go out ride with your buddies and stuff like that, there was nothing better.
Yeah.
And now there's so many other cool things that you can do. Even, playing Call of Duty with your buddies up in the middle of the night can be pretty dang fun too, So they're like, I don't know, maybe there's too many options and maybe that's why there's not so much. But the kids are still out there riding, so it's cool.
Yeah. I know my younger brother, I think kind of the same thing. Like he was so, he was 8, 9, 10 years old, kind of in the beginning, kind of prime part of my career. And it's almost like he was so into it that like, I remember he would go to the rigs and you'd like see the kids on the outside and he'd be like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Like it was like, it was
cool.
So like normal to him.
Yeah.
And then now that like I haven't been racing for a while and he goes to races, he's like obsessed.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as he
he's
can
like
get a bike,
fan.
he will have a bike. So I don't know if it'll hit Henrik the same way, but
I don't know either. I mean, I do think that he probably feels pretty cool, and he's probably a little bit, he's shy, and he probably doesn't really know how to act when, because Hunter is like so cool.
Yeah.
And like definitely treats him like really well, brings him in, talks to him, asks him all these questions, and Henrik's just like, you could tell he's like trying to be cool, but like he's kind of freaking out a little bit too, I think. But he's exposed to all that stuff just like your brother was, right? And it's like, maybe it's a little too easy, and he'll probably appreciate. I would think that later in life he's going to look back and go, "Dang, dude, I was hanging out in the rig with Jet and Hunter Lawrence, and and it wasn't a big deal."
Yeah,
because I can imagine my brothers now when they talk about Johnny O and all those guys back in the day. I mean, like now they're like, "Dang, dude, that's cool,"
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you ever just rub it in your dad's face that you've just won so much as a team manager?
My dad usually texts me something like kind of funny, like even before this, there would be like a Race Rex or something, or open up and there'll be like a mention of me from something, or whatever. And then later on in the same magazine, there's like a mention of him and maybe another mention of him later on. And he's like, Lars won. Gunner too, like he won or whatever. So that I think I don't ever rub it in his face because I mean, like my dad had a racing career, and like he won a lot of cool races. Like he won the first Daytona, he won a couple nationals. Like he's done some cool things that I'll never be able to do. We talk about it in kind of bench race, I guess, if you will. Yeah,
that's cool. One of the things that to me I think is like so impressive about guys like yourself is that you're able to kind of balance like the massive load of being a team manager and then still be like a really good dad and really good husband, And I don't think people realize like how difficult that is, like, I mean, there's so much required of you as a team manager, when you bring your family and stuff like that. I like really respect that. And I don't know, can you talk about just that aspect? I don't think people outside our sport understand how difficult it is to be at the races all the time, go to test. I mean, you're committed to this thing. That is the balance of doing all that. I mean, everything in not just life, I guess, but the job especially is about like walking that fine line and balance of everything. I think kind of we're lucky right now. I'm lucky right now that, the one good thing that has come out of COVID is that people are like okay now to have meetings on the computer, and you can do more things at home. So
especially my job, I can do a lot from home.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you work at home too much, and then the guys are in here busting their butt, like building bikes and working here till late, and I'm just not here, I'm home. It's like, it sets a bad example, you know? So, I try to balance that as much as I can with like taking my kid to school in the morning and then trying to getting up early and helping like all the little dumb things, like when it comes to, with Jen too, with my wife, like making, coffee and feeding the dogs and the cats. And we have like way too many animals at home too. But like she has to do all that usually when I'm gone. So like those little things, and sometimes I'll sleep too long or do whatever, and she has to do it. And I'm like, dang, dude, you're freaking lazy ass. Like I should do it so that she doesn't, whatever. So trying to do that and then take the kids to school and then get here in time. So we're like, people aren't like, all that is, it's hard to balance. But I mean, that's just life. It's like that for everyone. Yeah. But, and then, but the thing is, getting a lot of those things done in the morning that I can do emails and things like that. It helps all those little things with like, having it on my phone, being able to get, conversations done on the phone or, calling people like you and talking about whatever. And, I just gotta like try to take advantage of those little times when I can get all that done. Yeah. And then still try to get home at a decent time. Yeah. Where, you can have dinner, and usually I'm a little bit late for that, but my wife's really cool too. Like she's been around for a long time and she kind of knows. And honestly, the amount of time that we get apart from each other, a lot of times is a good thing. And she knows this and she says it too. Because then it definitely gives us more to talk about later, and a little good, a break is good sometimes, so, but that balance is really tough while also trying to give your kid the amount of time, and do your job well. It's one of the most difficult things about it. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, I think like the way that you've done it has kind of given permission to people on the race team to do it, like I've been around Honda for a long time, and I was here when it was like very, very rigid. And, if you weren't at the shop at 9 and, here until 5, it was like very looked down on. So it seems like the culture that you've kind of set because of that has been like really, really good for the team.
Yeah. That's a tough one too, because, if you're too relaxed, then people kind of start walking all over it, and taking advantage. So I think, I've tried to make it so that you can work around their schedule too. And I mean, everybody that has a family, or even if they don't, they need their time off. They need to be, and family should always come first, and I think I'm not the only one at Honda that has said that before. I mean, Eric was good about that. Yeah. Even, back in the day with Wes McCoy, like those guys, he always, not that I worked under him, but like Goose and everybody would always be like, no, he was really good about, make sure that your family's good and all that stuff, so that you can, so that you have a happy life away from work. So that's another balance that, of like, hey, you need to come in really early and get your stuff done and leave early, as long as you're getting the job done and you're not taking advantage of the situation, and people are kind of starting to look and like, well, that guy's already cutting out of here, man. He came after me, so everybody kind of needs to be, accountable for their own job. I mean, but, if you're a mechanic here, or if you're building engines, like it's self-policing a little bit, because if you're not getting, if that bike's not ready, everybody kind of knows, you didn't come in yesterday, so it's, it's kind of on you. Yeah. And everybody kind of knows. So that it's just like any workplace, I guess. It's just, trying to make sure that people get them, the amount of time off that they need and the schedule that they need while not taking advantage of it. But that's pretty hard. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I love whenever I see you get into like manager mode, because you're so relaxed. I've known you for so long. It's like when you like have to like get on someone, it's like the best thing in the world for me to see.
Were you in that meeting?
I was in. I don't know. It must have been like maybe a month or so ago.
Right? Yeah, I forget what it was. Yeah. But I had to get on somebody and everybody afterwards was like, yes.
I think it was someone in the back, right? And
Yeah.
Call him out. Yeah, I loved it. I was just on my computer screen just laughing.
Yeah, it might have been Tommy.
He probably.
Well, I made Tommy come sit next to me.
Oh man.
No, it's funny because that's not really obviously my demeanor is more like relaxed and chill, but yeah, everybody gets to a point, right, where you have to kind of be like, all right,
yeah,
like playtime's over.
Yeah, and I think you have to, right?
Yeah,
you know, like, and it's you do it well, but it's hilarious for me to watch it.
Yeah, I know. I think it's hard, you know, because I'm not. That's not my personality. Is whatever, you know, to have to like kind of lay down the law or whatever. So if I have to, you know, but if you don't, then people are like, oh, what a sissy, you know, like the guy's, you know, he's weak or whatever. So like, you know, you kind of have to at some point like assert yourself or at least let them know, like, so yeah, it's so hard. The first time I had to have a team meeting in here after Eric left, you know, and like be the guy, okay, this is what we're doing, you know, like it's so hard. You're like, you feel like a little kid and everybody's looking at you, you know, and it's like, it's a lot of pressure, you know, and it's kind of stressful. So it's like, but that is the kind of stuff too that is fun. Just like when you did that TED talk, right? Yeah. Like the amount of pressure, but the feeling after that you accomplished it and you did and you kicked ass at it, like it's pretty cool. Yeah. So like it's a challenge.
It's like this, like you want to do it, you're not sure if you can do it, and then you do it, and it's like yes, like, the little bit of me that believed I could do it. Right. Did it, and it's like it's really a good feeling.
Yeah, it is. It's rewarding, and it just like pumps you up a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, that's cool. I know you mentioned earlier that manager wasn't really on your list. Yeah. What was kind of your aspiration in this sport?
Yeah, that's a good question because it wasn't really an aspiration, and I don't mean that to sound like I would never like want the job. It was just. Honestly, it was like the team manager position was like here. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not going to get that. You know, like I'm not Eric Kehoe. I'm not, you know, like Dave Arnold or Cliff White or, you know, like my dad or anything like that. You know, I just didn't think that it was possible really because I was just a dumb kid. And so when that kind of started happening, like Eric was like kind of somewhat grooming me I kind of was like, you know, that's cool. He's letting me hang out with him, or you know, in these meetings, these more important meetings, we're talking with you know Japan and involving me in other things. I kind of was like, I wonder that's cool. Like I wonder if he's, you know, in the future that things started kind of getting to that point where when I was crew chief and things like that, where you know, you get to like a fork in the road, you know, and you're like you have to decide you can do this and that. My dad said that before too. Multiple times during your life, you get to a spot where you're like, it was probably when you're going to retire. Yeah. Okay, now this is a big step. Do I have to go this way or that way or, you know, whatever. And the crew chief job was probably the first time that I had that one. That was like, well, maybe leaving 2-2 was a big one. And then the crew chief was like, hey, we need a crew chief. Gothic J's leaving. Do you want to do it? And it was like, and I was kind of had a nice gig, right? Because I was working Monday through Friday. My kid was, you know, like 2 or 3 years old, so I was spending a lot of time at home, or as much as I could, while still working on special projects. And it was like, all right, I guess I'm going down this road. And then, you know, you get a little bit more confident, or a little bit more, you know, pressure on you because you get more responsibilities and things. But when that came up, it was like, dang, like I don't know what else I can do here. Yeah. That, you know, and I feel like I'm still young. You know, I'm 43, so I'm not that young anymore. But at the same time, you know, you still kind of feel like a kid. Yeah. And so, yeah, I don't really know what any of my real aspirations were, because at the same time, I started working here when I was 20 years old. Yeah. Maybe younger, actually. And, you know, even then, I was still a kid kind of racing and not really sure. Don't really know. Like, I'm impressed with some kids that are in high school that are like, this is what I want to be, and then they go and do it. Yeah. That is cool. Yeah. Like, because I didn't have any of that. Yeah. I was kind of like, I just want to hang out with my buddies, ride dirt bikes, and I definitely didn't want to work on them. So when I started kind of like, I got a job here, I got to borrow a CR250. That was a 125 rider, kind of whatever. And then I started hanging out, helping them. And that was kind of part of the deal, help them out with whatever they needed. And then I got to see, you know, Shane Drew and Goose and Ron Wood and the other mechanics, Alex Seymour. And I was kind of like, man, it's kind of cool, you know, like and just hanging out here was like, I'm at the Honda shop. It was sick. And that, watching them and kind of learning how they do it and everything was like, man, I could have like a good job. Like it'd be a pretty badass career.
Yeah.
Or, you know, whatever. And so I kind of never felt like I ever got a real job.
Yeah.
You know, because I just kind of was doing that. And then I got a job being the test guy. And then I was helping out Jeremy McGrath.
Yeah.
It was like, dude, you know, even when it was just a test guy and he was just testing, it was just unreal.
Yeah.
And then Wyndham and all these cool, like awesome riders.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know if I like really had any long-term goals.
Yeah.
You know, it was just kind of like, all right, now I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And then after being a mechanic, especially with Chad, you know, that was pretty huge for me and learned a ton. And then after that, like it was still even then, like I left Chad's going, man, should I go work? Like my buddy has a job out by my house, like working at a pharmaceutical place, like kind of being like a facilities kind of guy, but you know, awesome job, good benefits, all these things. And, so my buddy Steve, shout out to Steve Edwards. And, so anyways, there was still all those kind of things. So this just kind of happened kind of naturally, and I don't know. It's awesome, but it was never anything that I aspired to do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was curious about that because I remember when I actually, was at Geico, filled in for Shorty for a little bit of time, and then came full time to American Honda the next year. That's when you went to 2-2.
Yeah. That was 11.
That was 11.
Yep.
Yeah. And I just remember thinking that was like a great opportunity for you. And, you think that like a lot of these guys, like our guy Tommy, is a test guy. Now he works for Hymus.
Yep.
I'm sure our guy Blake right now wants to work for someone at some point. So I just thought it was a cool kind of launching pad for you. And I was curious if that was like, I've arrived, when you became a mechanic for Chad.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't think of it like that when I just got the job, because I worked for, we worked for Jeremy, but that was when he was retired and kind of doing fun races. That was perfect for me to learn because Jeremy taught me a lot and he was cool, super patient, and his results didn't matter that much, and I wasn't a great mechanic at all. Like, dude, I sucked. And I learned a lot, but I still had a long ways to go.
Yeah. And
I worked for Kevin in 07.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And so that was awesome because I was like, man, I'm a real mechanic for one of the best riders ever. It's like my childhood hero, kind of like.
Did you win your first race? No, that would have been 05. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah. No, I wasn't working for him then.
Yeah, I'm off. Yeah.
07, we won Unadilla.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of had a rough Supercross. We got close to winning the championship though, because that's the year James went out.
Yep.
And it was between us and Langston.
Yeah.
And probably a couple others, maybe Ferry, but it was basically Kevin and Langston at the end. So I'd done those kind of things. When I worked for Chad, the thing that I got the most out of working with Chad was that I was kind of a little bit stuck at my position at Honda. Mm-hmm. And because I was back being the test guy, and I didn't want to. The Wyndham thing ended because his whole deal went to Factory Connection.
Yeah.
And I would have had to leave American Honda, and then work in Corona, and I live in Thousand Oaks.
Yeah.
Not only would the drive been crazy, I was gonna have to would have moved.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have been a factory deal. I would have had to have a deal with them, which would have been fine. I knew the guys at Factory Connection. Obviously, as you know, they were all great guys, especially Ziggy, and My Shack and all those guys. But I'm like, man, I really don't want to leave Factory Honda,
Yeah.
It was just kind of my home, and I just didn't want to leave. So I stayed here.
Yeah.
And then he went and rode basically a production-based 450 with factory suspension, I guess. But and then Calma worked for him for years and years.
Yeah.
And me and Calma are buddies, so it was cool. But yeah, when I worked for Chad, it was just I learned so much because I got to do so much more after being kind of like stuck in a hole here, or not a hole, but in one position. I wasn't going to learn how to do that or that or that.
Yeah.
With Chad, it was like it was all on me, and Dave Osterman.
Yeah.
And honestly, for a long time, it was just me and Dave.
Yeah.
And then Shane, the truck driver, was doing truck driver stuff. Mike McQuillan was doing practice bike stuff. So, I mean, I had to do all the parts, order all the parts, and I ordered like everything up front because I thought we had to. So I ordered like the whole season's parts because I thought we had. That's how we did it here.
Yeah.
Want production parts? Boom, huge order. And I didn't have to do that. Parts they kept trickling in for months, probably the whole year. And but anyways, those kind of things I learned with him were huge for what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Getting to do that, communicating with sponsors, working with them. Working with Pro Circuit at the time and learning a lot from Mitch, which was awesome because I always had a huge amount of respect for Mitch, and he is buddies with my dad, so he kind of, I had a kind of an in with Mitch,
yep.
And so I wasn't just some dumb kid. Because of my dad. That's probably the biggest connection. Like even here at Honda, my dad didn't really have a great connection for me. He's super humble. Like he would never just like, hey, give my kid. Yeah. Or we never, even though my dad had been on the race team and all that, when we went to the races, we never went in the Honda truck ever.
Yep.
And we just looked from how far and I never met any riders, any of that. Like he could have totally brought me in, talked to Cliff, talked to those guys, and they could introduce me to McGrath, whatever. No way, no way would my dad do that, which is cool. Because I like that about my dad, that he's super humble and, doesn't take advantage of any situation that he could,
Yeah.
But so anyways, I made that answer way too long, but basically when I worked for Chad, I learned so much, and then it ended up becoming like, we had a lot of success, almost won a couple championships, won a bunch of races. And that really gave me, and also when I did that, like I grew up a lot.
Yeah.
Like I was way more organized. It was like a real job. I like I said, learned how to do a bunch of things that I would never had to do before, I just learned a ton.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I was racing against you guys.
11 Jacksonville.
Yeah,
that was the sickest one. Yeah,
that was me just scrubbing into things.
Yeah. You guys were battling. That was such a cool race.
Yeah, that was unreal. You guys were something about that team. It was like you guys had such a cool chemistry, and I think it's because you guys were all just grinding, Yeah, everyone was kind of pitching in, but
we had a lot of freedom too. I think which helped, which is kind of something that I've kind of brought along from those kind of days too, where it's like Chad's thing was always work hard, play hard kind of deal, and I think we have kind of similar mentality, here where it's pretty fun and loose, but at the same time we put the work in. And, but yeah, that team, we did have a good team, especially in 12 with Goose and Oscar and those guys.
Yeah. I remember, that, I mean, Honda was still fairly rigid at that point, I remember like looking across the aisle and you guys were like listening to like crazy music, and it was just, I don't know, they're just like, you're just having fun.
Yeah.
And, I thought that was cool. I was like, what are these guys doing? They need to be more serious.
Yeah, I know. And it was like I said, it was the freedom that we had to change things quickly and like not really have any restrictions on that was cool. Like we were able to make quick changes on things that we wanted to do. Chad obviously changed stuff all the time, and I kind of grew to like that. Like when I started working for Josh Grant afterwards, and we didn't change anything.
You're like, dude, this is
boring. Like, oh my god, dude! They're like, we have like 30 minutes in the next practice. I could at least make a fork change or do whatever. And so I'd just help Goose.
Yeah.
Like we'd just take Chad's bike apart and put it back together again.
I remember so many times like rolling out of practice and just looking over and Chad's bike is like all apart.
Yeah.
Like the front of the bike's off, the back of the bike's off. Like
all the
stuff's
time.
Everywhere. Like every weekend,
Oh yeah. I mean, I think the bearing races, like those things would fall in and out because you were in and out so often.
You didn't have to like get them in there.
Yeah. The one time that my favorite thing, I think, and it was part of it was working with Oscar too, was Anaheim, maybe 2 or whatever it was, and I think it was 13. It was like 8 minutes before practice, and Chad's like, hey, I want to try those different outer tubes that we had tested or whatever on the forks. And he's like, can we do it? And Oscar's like, I mean, we have 8 minutes. If you get them off right now, maybe I can do it. So me and Goose, forks off, went in there, and Oscar took the outer tubes on, changed all the internals back in, and we missed one lap of practice.
That's insane.
It was cool.
Yeah.
Like Oscar was super quick, and it was that kind of stuff though, like fire drill all the time. It really got you prepared.
Yeah.
For and I wasn't really nervous after a while. It was really routine.
Yeah.
And it was I think that was cool too, to get that like kind of pressure situation, and that kept you calm in a lot of other situations.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. It
Yeah.
was I think that part, another learning thing, was like good teacher.
Yep. So you've got to work with some really good riders. Kenny was your first like really big rider to work with. Chase, the Lawrences, Joe, Chance. Like there's been so many guys that have been really good. Trey Kennard. Just being here in that time, like, has that been difficult to try to get the best out of each guy? How has that been, trying to build that rapport, that relationship?
Yeah, it's been interesting because, like in some ways I think that you want to kind of be like that high school football coach that's just like getting everyone fired up and saying that perfect thing. Everybody wants that, right? The mechanic wants to do that. No mechanic wants to do anything more than tell your guy on the line something so motivational that your riders are going to go out there and kick ass. And it's because that used to happen with Stewart's mechanic back in the day. You'd be like in impound and you're like, man, James Stewart, he was awesome. Like, congrats, I told him before the moto, just get out there, get a whole shot, first 5 laps, check out, and then just cruise. And then he did.
That's what he did.
Yeah. So it was like, okay. Nobody, everyone wants to be that guy. And as a team manager, like, it's really hard because everyone's got their crew. Yeah. And so that's another balance thing where you're like, okay, these guys over here, they have 5 people telling them what they should be doing right now. Yeah. The job for me is probably like going, okay, these 2 people probably don't need to be in there saying anything right now. Like, let's shrink it to like the people that actually tell. And Eric was good about that too. Yeah. He was always like, all right, everybody wants to tell the rider, hit that line over there or do this line. And I'm no different. I'd be like, oh, Trey, dude, there's a quad that you could do over there. And it'd be like, you don't need to tell them that. Like, if you need to tell anybody, tell the team manager, tell the crew chief now, which we haven't had forever, right? Yeah. But there's key people that you can tell, and making sure that outside people aren't like influencing too much or doing all that. That's probably more, what you can do but you kind of, everybody's different. Yeah. But like, a guy like Joe doesn't have a lot of people, and he could probably use a little bit more people, like, helping him out, whatever. So that's what I try to do, is try to just observe what's going on and where I can help and where I can give either advice and also know when to stay in my lane and when to let people know to like kind of stay in their lane. Yeah. There's so many things like that, that are probably more valuable. Because the Lawrence they got Johnny O'Mara. Yeah. Johnny O'Mara knows a lot more than I do about, winning championships and all these things. And Darren Lawrence, he gets the most out of the boys. They absolutely listen to him, and he's awesome. Even when he's been on, and done interviews, right? Like, the guy afterwards can be a motivational speaker. I guarantee you. He'd be the best high school football coach. For sure. He'd be awesome.
He'd be ready to run through walls.
Yeah. No, he's great. So like, I realize that, and I know that I don't need to do anything on my side to try to get them to do anything more. I'll do, my little part here and there, but as long as I've got for a guy like Darren, he's probably looking at me going, okay, did you get me everything that I could have got for this motorcycle? Did you help get the funding, or, push hard to get these parts on my bike, or like those kind of things? Then, yes, then I feel like that's me doing my job and pushing on, getting everything that we can from American Honda, from Japan, and making sure that we got all those pieces and hiring the right people and things like that. That's what I feel like I can do for them. My position is not for the Lawrences to go, hey, you need to do this, dude. Like,
Yeah.
get out, get in their head or anything. Like, it's not like that. It might be for some managers, but not for me.
I feel the same way. People are always like, what did you say? And like, sometimes I'm like, I didn't say anything this weekend, because that's like the worst thing to me, especially when I was a racer, is just hearing so much information from like 10 different people. And then you're on the gate going like, okay, this guy said do this, that guy said do that. Yeah. And so I like just trying to know when to speak. And I've learned that I only really speak unless I really believe something can help everyone, So, and then just being the support you can, I think is, for me, that's in my role. So I totally relate to that. Yeah.
And making sure that the guys on the team have everything they need, and they're comfortable, and they don't have some guy in the pit going, like there's so many different things going on. The drivers, like there's a lot. And every team manager probably has totally different jobs, like than I do. I don't think there's one that's like, they do the same stuff. It can be so different, So.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. A lot of people don't know this, but you shred on a guitar. Where did that come from?
I don't know if I would say I shred, because like this is basically what I think about me playing guitar. If you met some guy in a podunk town, which they're very close to where you live. If some guy that has barely ridden a motorcycle watches some guy that can just barely jump his double, but he's been riding like 5-6 years, and that guy thinks that this guy shreds, he's like, dude, that guy's badass. Dude, that's me on a guitar. then Trey Kennard shows up and absolutely just blows people's minds. That's like there's a huge disparity there. Yeah. So like I can play a little bit, and like basically it was what happened was, it was when I was working for Wyndham in 2007. We were playing Guitar Hero. Like all of us were playing Guitar Hero, and
was everyone in 2007.
It was right when you were starting. Yeah. We were playing. We go to the hotel rooms, and we would like figure out how to like jimmy the TV, because they always had those little dumb locks in the back, so that you couldn't jack with the RCA cable or whatever. We'd figured out how to do that, and then we'd be in there playing. And at some point, I remember getting like pretty good, and to where I was like, like shredding like stupid guitar, and then thinking to myself, this is so dumb. I'm like, it's cool and it's fun, and we're having a good time, so that's cool. But I'm like, but I could be learning how to play a real guitar, and I'm doing all the same things. And honestly, it was like kind of good practice, like the timing and all those things. So I'd made a little bit of money working for Kevin, or just like whatever. So I'm like, I'm finally gonna go buy a guitar, because I've always wanted one, and I've always been never pulled the trigger. So me and my buddy Chris he was driving the truck, Chris.
Yeah.
And we went to a guitar center in Detroit, and I bought a Les Paul. And which, if you didn't know, is a type of guitar.
Yeah, I'm the guy that doesn't know anything that sees you.
It's basically the same guitar that Slash has always, been famous for playing, and whatever. And I bought a little like amp or whatever. And then the kid 41 that used to work here, Shane Baxter, his brother was an awesome musician, and he lived in Torrance, so. I got him to give me lessons, and he was giving lessons, and so I do a lesson a week, I think, for kind of probably 2 years off and on, like not like every single week, but for a while. And then that's really when I learned the most. Like I got my fingers moving, I got like kind of muscle memory, which is what it takes a lot to kind of get. And then I learned a bunch, and I was super into it. I was single. I was like, I had all the time in the world, dude. I was just, like other than the job, but my free time. So I played quite a bit then, and that's when I really like got better. And then once I got, married and kid, and then it like way down. Yeah. But I'm glad that it was one of those things where probably the most like proud of myself I am. I mean, I was like 26 years old. It wasn't like I was like 12 years old learning and like, you just figure it out. But it was a full discipline type of deal. It was like a thing where I wanted to play really bad. I knew that it was going to be a pain and really hard, and I just like kind of buckled down and did all the boring stuff to like the practice, and just kept at it, and then finally now I can kind of play guitar.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of cool, you know. So I'm proud of myself for sticking with it.
Just think how good at Guitar Hero you would be if you spent all that time.
I am.
Yeah. You're still that good at Guitar Hero.
I'm amazing.
I could never do it. I was always, you know, like dyslexic.
Yeah, no, I haven't played in a long time, but it like, you know, it's, I don't know. My brother was gnarly, so.
Yeah, that was such a funny time. There'd just be like 10 people on a couch and like taking turns.
Yeah.
You'd feel like.
It was kind of cool, I guess, because everybody was hanging out, having a good time, and even like I remember, I guess maybe it was 07. Remember Billy Lanimich, I think, and Jake Weimer got in a big car accident in Texas.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that was we were all playing there, and they were supposed to meet us, and then they had that huge crowd. It was like that's kind of ingrained in my memory.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's crazy. You spent a lot of time at Honda with a lot of different people. Who would you say kind of influenced you the most?
That's a good question. I would probably say there's a few different kind of different avenues on, like, you know, who influenced me the most as far as being a mechanic. I would probably say Ron Wood, because he kind of gave me the first break. You know, like he needed help, and I helped him out. He taught me a lot. He was cool. Like he got me the job. So he pushed them to get me paid to work here. Because for a while I was just working for free. Yeah. He got me a bike to ride, which was basically my payment.
Yeah.
And then so I learned a ton from him, and me and him were kind of like, you know, I was kind of his guy, you know. And then you know, Goose and Shane and those guys. I don't know if I could pick one guy. Cliff White, because Cliff White taught me a lot about you know, how things work and like figuring things out and solving some problems, you know, like that. Because I drove the test truck, and he would meet me here, and I would ride with him, and he was like the Clint Eastwood, you know, of like he's like this rough, like, and kind of guy, you know, like whatever. But he was super smart, awesome mechanic, you know, and he was the team manager, I think, or maybe he was kind of like because Eric had become the team manager, so he was kind of like technical director, I think was his name, or was his
role or
exactly,
title.
Title. And so, I learned a ton from him. But then later on, you know, when I became, it's really hard not to say Goose, because I learned so much when he was with me, and always liked him, looked up to him, always super cool, awesome to work with, never like talk down to you, always ask you questions about like why did I do it like that, and never make you feel stupid, you know. But I think later on it's got to be Eric. Yeah, especially for this, you know, like. He really like showed me a lot, taught me a lot, had a really good way of thinking about things, and being really like organized, and you know, all those dumb things that I did, you know, and he would kind of show me like, hey, you know, instead of doing that, you need to like maybe write some notes down, you know, or like if you, instead of doing this, like think about, you know, is this, you know, the best choice or whatever. Like he had a lot, and a lot of good advice for me. And then when it came to, you know, sorry, I didn't have to do computer stuff ever, right? Like hardly ever.
Yeah.
And then now like 99% of my stuff is on there, and, you know, Excel and PowerPoints and things like that. But yeah, you know, Eric really taught me a lot, and was always a good friend to me.
Yeah. I feel like the success we had is kind of like he really kind of really built a lot of the foundation of that, you know. Probably don't give Eric enough credit for his last couple of years here, but yeah, and it's, I always think about Eric. One of the things I remember about Eric is I call it the good, bad, good sandwich. Yeah. It was always like, hey, yeah, Trey, you're doing great. Yeah, but hey, man, you got to stop doing this. Like, stop doing that. But you're doing great. You're doing awesome. Just don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Was it good cop, bad sandwich?
I always call it good, bad, good sandwich.
Oh, okay. I thought it was, for some reason I thought it was good cop, bad sandwich, because like good cop, bad cop, whatever. But yeah, no, that's funny, because that obviously is kind of like just basic, you know, like managerial type of thing, where you kind of pump them up, and then you tell them the bad stuff, you know. But yeah, no, he was awesome at that kind of stuff too. Man, I always was so nervous having to go in to like negotiate my contract or something. Yeah. because he always had his ducks in a row, you know, and I always just felt completely like a flounder, you know.
Yeah.
Like, so,
I just blew that.
Yeah, and like I'm not prepared or not knowing. He'd ask me a question, and you're like, I don't know. So yeah, tons of, but yeah, for sure. He was. It kind of sucks, right? Because he left, and then we started winning a ton, and if he would have been here, most likely would have been the same. He would have been the one winning. But I don't think that he's the kind of guy that would hold a grudge like that. He's always texting me, man, I'm so happy for you, like, and congrats. And when he left too, before he had actually left, he's like, I think he was like, there's going to be some changes, but it's going to be good for you, man. I'm excited for you. It's going to be good. And I'm like, are you going to leave? And he's like, no. Like he didn't want to like say it then, but yeah, then he really pushed hard for me to get the job too. Yeah. I think that there was some options out there, and he was like, no, he's the one. He can do it, and so he really hooked me up, and so I appreciate him for all that, and always, I wish that we could hang out more, but it, obviously busy schedule, and he's got his stuff going on, so. But hopefully see him soon.
Yeah, it's cool. I haven't talked to Eric in forever, but I feel like every time I pick up the phone, it's like we pick up right where we left off. Yeah. Which is, I think for everyone in our sport, we kind of have that same. Everyone's under the understanding, like, hey, you're busy, and and you've lived that life, the grind of it all.
It's funny too, because like my wife will be like, even with not people in the industry, like buddies that I have, right? Like I may have not talked to a friend for like 5 years. And I'm like, it's still my friend.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And she's like, he's not your friend. When's the last time you talked to him? And I'm like, I don't know, like 3-4 years ago. She's like, you're not even friends. You don't talk to each other. I'm like, I guarantee you I could do that. I could call this guy, whoever it is, and in 30 seconds, it'd be like we hadn't stopped talking.
Yeah, we got to do this again.
Yeah, for sure. I got plenty of friends like that where I'm like, yeah, that's my buddy. Of course it is, but you just don't have time. And everybody's got, especially at this point in your life too, like you got family and you got work and you just don't have the time. So, but yeah, it's funny.
Well, cool. I don't know if you heard that a minute ago, but the janitor came in and changed the trash. So it's probably time for us to go.
All right. I'm good to keep going if you want, but you're right. There is some trash over there.
I think we got in our way. But well, thanks a ton, man. I know, like we've talked about, you've got a lot going on, but I appreciate you taking the time. And really, I want to say good job, man. Like the last 4 years has been incredible. So. Yeah,
it's been awesome to have you be a part of it too, and and even call you such a good friend. Like because even though when you were on the team, like you kind of like, especially me, I wasn't really going to all the races. I don't think at the time.
Yeah.
And never, one little bucket list thing that I got to do was be a mechanic in Mammoth.
Oh, dude, I was good. That was actually on my list.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you what your greatest accccomplishment was
that
in
might
the
have been
sport, besides
if you would have won that one moto, you could have won the King of Mammoth or whatever. But yeah, that didn't happen. So.
Yeah, people ask me why I did Mammoth, and I'm like, Lars was, we were gonna go up there for some altitude testing, and then we didn't test at all, really. I was like, I think Lars wanted to go to Mammoth, and I thought it would be cool. So we did it.
No, it was cool. But it was cool because we used to do that with Jeremy, before and whatever, and that was fun. That was getting to work for you and be a mechanic again. That was the last time I was a mechanic, I think.
Oh, sweet.
I don't think I've been one since, but yeah, no, it's special, having you still be a part of the Honda family and be, working with you all the time and helping as much as you do. 'Cause like today, you freaking tested until dark, and then yesterday you tested until dark, and tomorrow you're going to test until dark.
Yeah,
so,
that's what we do.
Yeah, it's awesome. The amount of work that you put in for everything is appreciated.
Yeah,
big time.
Well, it's cool. One of the reasons I really wanted to do this podcast with you, one, you're my friend. I want this to be good conversations with good friends.
Yeah.
But I've just really enjoyed our team. Like, it's just been such a fun team. Everyone wants to do a good job. That's what I really enjoyed about it. You're not really having to kind of like, okay, come on, really put some effort. It seems like everyone, for the most part, is really like reaching for the same goal. So, and I think you have a lot to do with that. So,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you've done a great job, man.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Yeah, no, I think we do have. It's awesome right now. Obviously, we try to ride this wave as long as we can, right?
Yeah.
And and it's exciting having the riders that we do right now too, and the team along with it, and you helping guide the motorcycle and help, and talking to them about that. So, let's keep on keeping on, man.
Sweet. Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks.
I feel like we need to handshake right now.
Yeah, that was a nice, good looking thing.
MXGP? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. Ciao, 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 ciao.
Yeah,
ciao.
MXGP handshake. That's what they do.
Yeah.
They all do that.
Yeah, they do. It's like they know, too.
Oh, yeah.
And they have the good connection. You know, like a good
There it is. There it is. That was much better than the first one.
Yeah.
Watch any podium, MXGP. MotoGP, too. Yeah. That's what it is. Yeah.
I like that because I don't know a lot of times if I should go
I know, it's hard
potatoes or pancakes.
True.
And then you get caught in that weird potato pancake kind of like.
There's another weird one over there where they go for the MXGP handshake, and you're like, oh, okay, bro. And then no, and then you go, and then you go for the thing, and they're like,
oh, whoa,
what are you doing?
Yeah, we don't hug.
Yeah,
We don't hug.
no. I'm like, no, I want to go in for the bro, like, and no, they don't know what that. They don't know what that is.
Yeah, isn't that weird though when you go to handshake and then that other person goes in?
Yeah, and then both of you decide I'm not
giving it.
Yeah.
So you both sit there.
Yeah, and then finally somebody goes, okay, I better do it, and then they do it too. It's awkward.
Yeah.
So many of those awkward moments for sure.
That's probably the toughest part of your job, huh?
It is knowing how to handshake and when to hug.
What?
I mean, there's a hug too.
There is time for a hug.
Yeah. There's like a fine line between. We're getting way off topic now.
Yeah, I love it.
There's a fine line between how tight are you as bros? Like, do you go for the hug?
And then also too, do you go for the church hug, like the side hug?
Ooh.
Or do you go for the whole thing? You know what I mean?
Is this Seinfeld?
I don't know. Is that a Seinfeld thing? I never got into Seinfeld.
There's a great Seinfeld episode where he's gonna meet a chick for the first time, and he's like, I don't know if she's into me, and he's like, well, it's how the greeting. If she goes for the handshake, you're out. Goes for the hug, you're in. And he's like, that's a good idea, or whatever. And then they show up, and she comes up, and she goes, hey, and they like hands like this, and he's like, what is it? That's funny.
Yeah, my mom is she's not a real hugger.
Oh yeah.
So like sometimes people hug her, and I'm like,
yeah,
maybe don't hug her unless you know her super well.
Yeah. I have to admit, I don't know what I would do if I saw her now. Like, I haven't seen her in a while.
Yeah, you totally give her a hug.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah.
cool. I will.
Yeah,
Cool.
do it.
All right,
Yeah.
I will.
Well, thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, dude.
Let's get you home. It's
All
9
right, cool.
o'clock at night.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thanks, dude.
See ya.
See ya.